Hi, it's Dwyer. September 11th, 2025. Dwyercrime.blog, also always 1776.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Folks, this assassination of Charlie Kirk, to me, looks like a professional hit. I don't believe this is some disgruntled protester who, is deluded and on the fly makes the decision to kill a political commentator. Right? No, this looks pre-planned. This looks well-planned. Understand how well-planned it is. They arrested two people, or at least had two people of interest. Right? Folks, both of them have been released. It's the highest level of our law enforcement. It's the FBI who is now involved in the investigation. FBI Director Kash Patel has issued public statements. Right? So we have sophisticated law enforcement going after the killers, issuing statements that they have someone in custody, only to find out that the people who they've arrested, they don't have enough to hold. Let me also say, too, films of the assassination are on X. It looks to me like the killer knew exactly where to hit Charlie Kirk. If your carotid artery gets severed, it's my understanding that you only have, at best, 3 minutes to live. Right? Often these universities, as you can imagine, are close to hospitals. These universities have med schools. The hospital close by helps the medical students. Also, you have students on these campuses. They need health care. There are a lot of them, right? Thousands of them. Typically, you go by many of these colleges and you will see there are healthcare centers nearby. This killer made it impossible for them to save Charlie Kirk. If you look at the assassination tape, you're going to see blood gushing out of his wound. Right? There's blood all over his shirt moments after he's hit with the shot. Now, let's add in the fact that that shot to his neck was done, hundreds of feet away. We're estimating that the shooter was at least 200 feet away. But yet, that shot hit Kirk in the neck. Not only that, the sequence is such that Kirk is talking to the crowd. He has a handheld mic. Right? So his hand's in the way. The killer waits until Kirk takes a breather and moves the mic down. And literally the next moment, once Kirk's hand's out of the way, the killer gets off the shot that kills Kirk. Now, there are films online of someone running across the roof moments after the assassination. Right? We're speculating that the person seen running across the roof is the killer. Right? Here's what I want people to think about. It's clear that Kirk is shot with some kind of high-powered rifle. The person running across the roof is not holding a rifle. Right? And so what I want people to think about is that I believe, and in time we'll learn, that this killer is such a professional that the killer likely left the rifle in the spot where he fired the shots, runs off knowing that when they find the rifle, they won't be able to track it back to him or her. In other words, that rifle is not going to have any DNA on it. It's not going to have any fiber evidence on it. This killer likely wore gloves of some kind. Let me say, too, that the person on the roof is dressed in black. I'm guessing the person was so well prepared that they took off the black clothing and likely had other clothing underneath it. In other words, the killer is, running away from the scene. It's a college campus. Unless law enforcement is hiding information from the public, which is a distinct possibility, right? Because they need to keep some information private so, they can follow leads without public interference. They can confront some suspect with information that the public doesn't know. But yet, I haven't heard of anyone seeing anyone dressed in black anywhere other than on the roof. Right? So this person, whoever did this killing, had to have ditched the black clothes. Right? By the time they got to the parking lot, they probably were dressed like everyone else on campus. Let me also say, too, that a crime like this would require planning. You would have to know where Charlie Kirk is going to be. You would have to know what spots would have a clear shot at him. Right? Most people don't know this campus. The killer would have to have scoped out the scene in advance. Knew how to get to the roof without being noticed. Knew how to get a rifle on campus, on the roof. Knew their escape route. Now, what's interesting here is that many of these campuses, as you can imagine, have these cameras on them in furtherance of student safety. Right? We haven't heard, and again, maybe law enforcement is keeping this information quiet, but we haven't heard of anyone scoping out the roof in the days leading up to the Charlie Kirk assassination. Right? You would imagine people being up on a roof would be extraordinary, would be out of the usual. Other people would notice. Right? You would look up, you'd say, wow, what's that dude doing up there on the roof? In the days leading up to Charlie Kirk's murder. Right? We have no information, at least no public information, of any person or group on campus hanging around vantage points. Right? How would the killer know that the roof was there and would be perfect for an assassin to set up a kill shot? Right? I believe the killer has to have had some familiarity with the campus, had to have done some research, had to have checked out the roof in the past. It seems to me that there should be at least one camera someplace as part of that university security system that would catch someone scoping out the roof in the days leading up to the murder. Right, sure. There'd be a lot of students, let's say at some school cafeteria or walking on some walkway. But there shouldn't be anybody up on the roof, should there? Right? So understand, I don't believe whoever did this is some unsophisticated dilettante who has a grudge and who, spur of the moment decides to bring a firearm to a Charlie Kirk event. No, 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 no. Folks, this is a crime that was prepared for. This was a crime with moving parts. Right? A rifle on campus. A roof location with a perfect shot at the stage where Charlie Kirk sat. A killer who wanted to kill Charlie Kirk. In other words, the shot is to his neck, not his chest. It's to his neck to take out an artery that would make it almost impossible to save Kirk's life. In other words, this shooter was thinking about arteries. Right? This shooter didn't want to hit his ear or wrist, Charlie Kirk moving his head. No, he picks a part of Kirk that's hard to move. Kirk's neck. Right? And of course, no one's talking about it. Folks, that rifle still has to be on campus, doesn't it? The person running across the roof, where's the rifle? It's clear they didn't use a handgun from 200 feet. Where's the rifle as the figure on the roof runs away? If they left the rifle on the roof, isn't that high risk? Because Lord knows if there's a weapon in the United States that's going to be heavily scrutinized for DNA and stuff like that, this rifle would have to be on the very short list. Right? The killer has to know they can't trace this rifle back to me. Right? So the rifle, no doubt, is not registered to the victim, to the killer. I'm guessing there's going to be no DNA. We don't even know what kind of car the killer used to get to campus. Right? You would think they would leak that information. They would say, gee, look out for this Toyota Camry with, the last 3 digits being blank, blank, blank. Right? So people with, merchants with security cameras located by streets would, go through their films to see if a Camry passed by shortly after the assassination. Folks, there's nothing like that. We might never catch this killer. We don't know how they came to campus. We don't know how they left campus. Quite frankly, we don't even know what race the person is. Right? Person's wearing black. We don't know. But yet somehow, this killer knew where to set up. This killer knew how to get an unobstructed shot at Charlie Kirk. And this killer knew how to hit him in a place where he ends up bleeding out. Those are my thoughts. Information's coming out every day. As information comes out, I hope you leave yours in the comments section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.